Steve, and today we're going to show you how to use the Keithley Hall effect test system. This is a system that includes the 3706A with the 3765 Hall effect card, a 6221 current source, a 6485 picoammeter, and a 2182A nanovoltmeter, which is optional. You can also use the 3706A DMM to make your measurements. We're going to go through a full test setup from the cabling to the setup of the instruments to actually running a test on a 10 mega ohm square resistor right here. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is set up our card before we put it into the instrument. We're going to make sure that our jumpers here are configured to guard mode. We are also going to make sure that we have our external voltmeter connections in, if we're using an external voltmeter, and we want to set up our analog grounds so that we can use them later. These 4 cables will go through these little holes in the front of the card so that you can connect them to your external instruments. Alright, these are standard 3-pin jumpers. We want to make sure that they are in this configuration so that we know that the card is in guard mode. Alright, so now we're going to set up the external voltmeter if you're using one. You're going to want the low of the voltmeter to be on the 4th terminal from the left and the high to be on the 5th. You're also going to want to make sure that you have 2 banana cables attached to the first 2 terminals here, so we can hook those up to the picoammeter and current source. These are pretty easy tabs to use. They're not screw terminals. You just push down on the orange tab, which will release the wire, and you can also put it back in. Alright, so now we're going to go over the cables that we're going to need to make this measurement. The first thing that we'll need is 4 triax to alligator clip. We're using alligator clip here because we have a simple square resistor here that's soldered together. And that's going to be the best to make the connection for that dut. We will also need a triax cable, the low thermal cable for the 2182A if you're using the external voltmeter, and a low noise BNC cable. Alright, now we're going to go through the cabling of the Hall effect test system. The first thing we're going to want to do is take those 2 banana plugs you connected to the inside of the card earlier and connect them to the lows on the picoammeter and current source. Then you're going to want to take the 4 triax to alligator clips that we had earlier and connect them to sample 1, 2, 3, and 4 here, the last 4 triax plugs on the back of the card, like so, as well with 3 and 4. Then you're going to want to plug in the BNC to the monitor out and connect that to the picoammeter. So we're going to go here to our picoammeter, which is just above it. And finally, the triax cable to the source in. And to the 6221 or current source. We should be all set to go. Alright, now if you're using the external voltmeter, in this case a 2182A, we're going to want to hook up the low thermal cable to the front of the 2182A, screw that tight, finger tight, and then connect the red and black cables to the high and low, respectively. Remember, green was our low and white was our high. And now we have the external voltmeter set up if you choose to use that. Alright, now for the connections on the sample, you're going to want to connect the red cable, or the center conductor of each triax, to points 1, 2, 3, and 4 along your sample, and then you're ready to go. Okay, now that we have all of the cabling ready, we're going to go through each instrument and set them up individually so that we can do our Hall effect measurement. Alright, the first thing we're going to set up is the 6221. First thing we're going to want to do is hit the triax button and set the inner shield of the triax to guard. Then we're going to go over to the output low and make sure that that is floating, and it is, so we're good. And we can press exit. Now we're going to want to set this up for a 1 microamp measurement since we're using 4 10 meg resistors in a square. So we're going to click on this button here, downrange to 1 microamp. Set it to 1 microamp, and we're all good to go on the 6221. Alright, now we don't have to do any setup on the 2182A voltmeter. And on the picoammeter, the only thing we have to do now is release zero check once we're making the measurement. So now we'll go on and show you how to set up the 3706A. Alright, so now we're going to close the appropriate cross points on the 3706A. You're going to want to press enter twice. We're going to close 102, 201, 303, 404, and finally 405. And that's important for high impedance measurements. That's the guard switch. Alright, so now with those cross points closed, we should be ready to make our measurement. Alright, now that we've closed all those cross points, we can turn the output on the 6221 and turn off zero check on the picoammeter. You can see that we are sourcing 1 microamp and we are getting about 2.5 volts, which is what we were expecting.
Alright, so we're going to go up into the Instruments tab, and we are going to select Configure. Now here we're going to see that we have our ammeter, current source, switch, and voltmeter all hooked up and recognized by the software. We're going to press OK. I'm going to go back up to the Instruments tab and press Test Connections. Alright, so now it is testing the connections, and the communications test is passed, so we're good to go. Now we're going to go over to the current level and change that to 1 microamp. We'll change the compliance level to 10 volts, and for soak time we'll just do 3 seconds. Alright, now we're going to go to the Vanderpaa tab and press Start Test. It'll say sample name and username have been left blank. We don't really care about that right now, so we'll just press OK. It's going to ask us to remove any magnetic fields, but we don't have any. You'll follow those prompts if you're doing a test yourself. And now we'll wait for the results to come in. First result is about 2.5 volts negative. It's about what we were expecting. Now the second result has come in, about 2.5 volts again. So it's clearly working. Finally, positive 2.5 on the 8th. All right, now it's going to switch over to the Hall measurements. It's going to ask us to apply a magnetic field. We aren't doing that for this particular test since we're just showcasing the software, but we'll press OK and I'll let you guys see that here. That should be all you need to do, and you should be all ready to go to make Hall effect measurements.
Alright, so that was the Keithley Hall effect test system. If you have any further questions, please feel free to contact Tektronix support. We'd be happy to help.